Thrilled and pumped for that. Cortez.
Protestants.
Cortez,
Oh,
how you doing, brother? You able to hear me?
doing good, brother. Good afternoon. Your goodness.
Good afternoon, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's an honor to talk to you, honestly. I'm always telling my brother about how I love watching your channel and whatnot. So it's great to
Cool.
be able to talk to you for sure.
Awesome, brother. Very
But
humble to hear you being so kind, and hopefully I'll be able to help you, brother. What do you got in your mind?
oh, oh yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, obviously to preface, I'm a Roman Catholic, and
Good.
I had some questions about the Apostolic Church Fathers that I said in the chat. Uh,
Hmm.
First of all, who would you say are the most important church fathers? Uh, Besides the apostles, obviously, when it
It
comes to
depends.
studying.
It depends what era, and it depends what field. Are you looking into
Hmm.
Trinity? Are you looking into Mariology? What are you looking into? It really depends. Now, I mean, I love them all, but
Hmm.
in terms of you saying which ones are your favorite ones, I mean, you got phenomenal apostolic fathers, ante-Nicene, Nicene, post-Nicene, and they're all great, even the medieval ones. It's really hard
Hmm.
to pin down one. So really, you pretty much have to tell me, okay, well, William, I love Christology, or I love the Trinity, or I love
Hmm.
Mariology. It really depends what you're interested in. What is your
Well,
area of interest?
well, I guess right now my main, I guess, infatuation would be, I guess, church history, and I know that there's a very divisive father, Saint Ignatius of Antioch, where like us as Catholics, we know without a doubt that he existed, but in a lot of Protestant circles, I've seen debates with James White, with Need.net, where like they acknowledge his letters, but they will barely acknowledge his existence. And why would you say that a lot of Protestant circles deny that Ignatius of Antioch existed?
I don't think a lot of them deny it. I think that a few of them will call into question his existence because it doesn't benefit them. In fact, you're going to find that they get that from Calvin. Calvin didn't deny that he existed, but Calvin called into question all the letters of Ignatius because,
Oh yeah.
particularly, they taught Catholic things. They get that from Calvin, believe it or not.
Hmm. I think I remember hearing that in a Joe Heschmeyer video. So I guess my understanding was a bit off, but yeah, I believe you're right about that. 'Cause I guess it's kind of hard to, I guess, deny his existence when Clement of Rome wrote about him into the epistles. You know, it's kind
Yeah.
of like an obvious guy that existed. But I guess,
And
my biggest question would be like, who would be the best church fathers to research when it comes to wanting to learn more about the history of the very early church?
um, he's not a father, but he's a great writer and ecclesiastical figure. Look at Eusebius of Caesarea. He's very
You
good
see. Hmm.
writing in the early to close to mid uh, fourth century. He is the author of ecclesiastical history, church history. He's good, very good. Another one that
Hmm.
is really good to look into is Socrates Scholasticus. He is writing probably close to around the either the late fourth um, or early fifth century. But then you've also got Sozomen, who's good, and then you have very rarely do people point to him. But you have Blessed Theodore of Cyrus as well, who wrote ecclesiastical history. He's another one to look into.
You said
Um,
what were their names again? If you don't mind me asking, I apologize. I just got a
Eusebius,
piece of paper to write them down.
Eusebius of Caesarea,
Eusebius,
Socrates Scholasticus,
Socrates, Scholasticus,
Sozomen,
Sozomen.
and then Blessed Theodoret of Cyrus.
Blessed of where?
Theodoret of Cyrus.
Theodomy. Gotcha. That's perfect.
And
And I
then
guess it had.
as you go later into history, you're going to want to pick up the Venerable Bede, who is later in history, not an early church father, but what we would call a medieval father. Also wrote church history. So you're going to want to get those. You're going to want to read those. They're all really good. Don't
For
neglect the
sure.
medieval fathers. One area that I
Oh
tend
yeah.
to see the majority of people do neglect them, probably because they're very hard to find books that are affordable translations. But it's very important to not neglect the medieval fathers. In fact, I've been covering them a lot more in 2025, and I intend to throughout the rest of the year cover the medieval fathers a lot because a lot of the times they are phenomenal because they synthesize the early patristic era teachings along with the later Golden Age patristic era teachings, and they bring them to the forefront in the medieval era to show what the church has always had in her mind. The medieval fathers are very important as well. And for medieval fathers, I mean Saint Germanus, Venerable Bede is one, of course. And then, of course, later figures like the great Aquinas, who is incredible. And, of course, we also mean the great Blessed Duns Scotus, Bernard of Clairvaux. There's a lot of them there. A lot of really, really.
That's a lot. You're like a whole encyclopedia. Dear goodness.
I know church history. I read a lot of church history, brother.
You know too much. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But I guess I had one more question. I might have a third one if I remember. But I guess actually I remember the second one, so I got two more questions, but they'll be really quick ones.
Sure.
One of them is the practice of I forgot the name of it, but it's when your confirmation saint. Where does that practice come from, and do we see it in the early church, or is that something that developed as the church developed?
Yeah, well, you're gonna find that developing later. It is a later development. Now, of course, the sacrament of confirmation, as you know very well, is biblical. You find that in the book of Acts. That you have no doubt about that. But in terms of giving a name, where do we get that custom from? It is late, but it has a very powerful biblical basis. Now, where do we get it from? In the Bible, what has happened with Saul? Saul becomes Paul. And we find over and over Roman converts and others often drop their older names, their pagan names. And what do? They do that in favor of saints' names. Roman converts did that very early on. So in terms of that becoming a prominent tradition, I'm going to say probably around the medieval era, you find that becoming very common. The earliest that I've ever been able to date that is around the 17th century, but I am positive it definitely predates that. I just never followed the paper trail all the way back, because it really just hasn't really, interested me. I just know that even though it isn't biblical, we get it. It's rooted in the early baptismal practice. That is very clear, where converts took the names of saints, and then later on, that became common practice in the church. And today, it's very common.
Is that also why the popes share names, so to speak?
It would be a different reason. It would be
a different reason. Okay, sorry, my bad.
Yeah. More along those lines, of course, but it would be a little bit of a different reason.
And I guess this is my last question.
Go for it.
I guess I was doing some research on the Crusades, and I was wondering, because if I remember vaguely, I guess you could probably explain it better than I can. But if I recall correctly, Pope Urban said that those who fought, I guess, for Christ would be guaranteed a seat in heaven. Is that correct? I mean, I'm just wondering.
No, what Pope Urban did was Pope Urban offered what was called an indulgence. Now, he offered what was, well, let's break it down. You're referring to Pope Urban II, by the way, for the audience they may be wondering, and you're referring to the Council of Clermont. Now, what he did was he said that those that were to take up arms to help liberate the Holy Land, which is, of course, he was referring to Jerusalem at the time, the late 11th century that was under Muslim control. He says that those that would have set out to help liberate and the Holy Land, that they would have been given a plenary indulgence. So what does that mean? Now, number one, you've got to finish your life. You've got to finish your life in the grace of God. It isn't automatically, okay, well, you go and you do this, and then later on in life, you live a life of being a wretched sinner, and you die in mortal sin, and you still go to heaven. No, not at all. What was given was a plenary indulgence, and that is, as you know, indulgences of the remission of all temporal punishment due to sin, but they still had to remain in a state of grace and to continue to live their life out in holiness. It wasn't a matter of him saying merely participating in this and living your life out in whatever way you want would get you to heaven. Not at all. And I think people very often tend to wrench that out of context.
Yeah, it's because whenever I think to bring it up, it's especially when comparing it, at least when speaking about Christianity and Islam, it's a lot of people will be at least from what I've seen, they'll say, how can you condemn Muhammad for telling his his followers to die in battle, when your popes have authority to send people to heaven if they fight too. Now I'm sitting here, I'm stumped. I'm stumped for like a second, which is I guess stupid on my part because I haven't done enough research. It's just I kind of never really expect, how to rebut to that.
Yeah, well, another thing we need to realize is we got to remember, what are they doing? They're going to liberate the Holy Land that has been taken
Oh
over
yeah,
by barbarians.
that's true. That's a very good point.
It isn't a matter of them trying to conquer a land that didn't rightly belong to them. It's a matter of them trying to reclaim the Holy Land. So there's a very, very big difference there. Massive difference.
Oh yeah. I guess it was like a basically like a very big call to help from Europe, and like the Pope was like, we gotta do something about that, so to speak.
Right.
Because it wasn't like an unjust like taking of the land, like I don't know, like maybe like Hitler trying to take Poland or something like that. It's like these people are being like ransacked and destroyed. Like countries that used to be Christian countries, like Spain, I mean like Egypt and whatnot, were taken over by the Muslims. I'm pretty sure during the I think 300 years of the Muslim expansion. And I guess we were just trying to help out the Christians that were there, so to speak.
Yeah,
If I recall correctly.
Yeah, well, the Catholics were trying to reclaim the Holy Lands, and they were trying to battle back the conquering, because what was happening was, as you know very well, they were plundering the lands and they were killing the women, they're raping the women, killing the children. It was horrible. It really was. So, rightly so. People, I don't understand the mentality of certain people that look at them. Look, were there particular abuses that rose during the Crusades? Of course. We are messed up people. We're sinful people. There's no doubt there were abuses, but the offering of an indulgence from the Pope, that was not an abuse. It was a plenary indulgence, and the Crusades were good. I mean, they were good. The intent was to liberate the Holy Land. That is what it was. As far as there being later abuses, yeah, later on you've got Crusaders that they cause scandal and what have you. We're human. We're messed up, and the more and more that the wars rage, the more and more, filled with anger and rage and hatred some of these people became. With that in mind, that doesn't change that the original intent and the proper intent was a good one. And without the Crusades, Europe would have fallen, and then, of course, the rest of the world.
That's a very interesting perspective. And that really is. I guess real quick to recap, and after that I'll head out because I don't want to take too much of your time. I know there's a bunch of people here. But I guess to recap, right? The indulgences, right? Indulgences aren't kind of like a get into heaven free card. Indulgences, is you have to already be saved, right? So that it reduces the temporal punishment you get through purgatory, I think. Or did I not? I'm sorry, I don't think I heard right.
Indulgences don't forgive sin. I think that's the one thing that immediately people need to realize. What forgives sin? That is the sacrament of confession, not an indulgence. So they don't guarantee heaven. So number one, if an indulgence doesn't forgive sin, then of course you're not guaranteed heaven. But with that being laid out, what is an indulgence? Well, there's different types. You have a partial indulgence, which removes part of the temporal punishment due to sin, and then of course you have a plenary one, which was what was offered by Pope Urban, and that removes all temporal punishment, and only one plenary indulgence can be gained per day, and that has always been the conditions of the church. But talking about conditions of the church, yeah, why are you not guaranteed heaven? Because you got to be in a state of grace. If you have mortal sin, or you're living in mortal sin, well, you have not fulfilled one of the most important requisites for plenary indulgence. Not only that, you have to have complete detachment from sin. Not only mortal, you got to have even venial. And you got to partake of the sacrament of confession. That's why, as I noted to you, indulgences don't forgive sin. That is why we have the sacrament of confession. So there are a number of things that need to be done in order to qualify for a plenary indulgence. And very clearly, people tend to think, well, an indulgence, I am forgiven of all sin. They don't understand what the church teaches in terms of indulgences.
And when you say like it wipes away like all temporal punishment, what would be temporal punishment?
It would depend person to person. It could be, I can give you an example. Maybe there's a particular kind of punishment that a that a saint is going to have to undergo. Now, that particular punishment would then be removed, and it really depends from person to person because we're all different people. One example that I like to give is that in terms of post-mortem temporal punishments, the fathers had different views. For instance, in the afterlife, for Cyprian, he thought temporal punishment in the afterlife was like a prison. But in that prison, you would be purified by fire. And then you have other fathers like Basil, which thought that the temporal punishment was a fiery purification with fire. Many fathers thought that there was a literal, actual fire. St. John Chrysostom thought that in terms of temporal punishment in the afterlife. And then there are others that thought temporal punishment would happen in a place, in a location. You can read St. Hippolytus of Rome, who thought that punishment occurred in Hades. And the punishment occurring in Hades was a kind of torment because the Hades that you were in, the underworld, was very close to hell, and you that was part of your torment. Even though it wasn't hell, it was the underworld, and that was part of the temporal punishment. It can vary from person to person. I mean, that's the whole point. That's why we got to get to confession. We got to get cleaned up. We got to stay prayered up, man, and we got to get to the Holy Eucharist.
Yes, sir. I think that's all the questions I had. I really got to do a lot more research, and I really do appreciate your time for sure.
I hope that was helpful, brother. God bless you, man.
No, it really was. God bless you, sir. You have a good day. Night.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries, brother. Glad that was helpful.